In a small, quiet town where dusty roads carried the stories of countless dreams, lived a young man named Ayan who believed that words had power, yet struggled to express his own. Every morning, he would sit by the old wooden window of his modest home, watching people pass by with confidence, speaking fluently, laughing freely, while he remained silent, trapped in the fear of being misunderstood. Ayan wasn't weak or incapable, he was simply unheard, even by himself. His biggest dream was not wealth or fame, but the simple ability to speak English fluently, to connect with the world, and to give voice to the thoughts that lived inside his heart. Ayan lived with his mother, a gentle woman whose hands carried the marks of sacrifice. She worked tirelessly to provide for him, often skipping her own meals just to ensure he never felt the emptiness of hunger. She never complained, but Ayan could see the silent struggles behind her tired eyes. He wanted to change their lives, to bring ease into her days, but every time he tried to take a step forward, his lack of confidence held him back. Job interviews ended in silence. Opportunities slipped through his fingers, and slowly, self-doubt became his closest companion. One day, while walking through the market, Ayan overheard a group of students practicing English together. They weren't perfect, but they spoke with courage, correcting each other, laughing at mistakes, and trying again. Something about their effort touched him deeply. It wasn't their fluency that inspired him, but their willingness to try. That evening, for the first time, Ayan stood in front of a mirror and whispered a simple sentence in English. His voice trembled, his words broke, but he didn't stop. That moment marked the beginning of a quiet revolution within him. Days turned into weeks, and Ayan created a small routine. Every morning, he would listen to English conversations on his old phone and repeat them aloud, practicing what he later learned was called shadowing. At first, it felt strange, almost embarrassing, but gradually, the words began to feel familiar. He would pause, repeat, stumble, and try again. Sometimes he laughed at his own mistakes, and sometimes frustration brought tears to his eyes, but he never allowed himself to quit. His mother would watch him from the doorway, her heart filled with both concern and pride, as she saw her son fighting a silent battle. One evening, while practicing, Ayan met Sarah, a kind-hearted girl who had recently moved into the neighborhood. She had come to return a book mistakenly delivered to their house, but what she discovered instead was Ayan's quiet determination. Hearing him practice, she smiled warmly and encouraged him instead of judging. Sarah herself had faced struggles in her life, having lost her father at a young age, and she understood what it meant to carry responsibilities while chasing dreams. She offered to practice English with him, not as a teacher, but as a companion. Their journey together became something beautiful, not because of grand gestures, but because of small, consistent efforts. Every evening, they would sit under the fading sunlight, practicing conversations, sharing stories, and correcting each other with patience. Ayan found comfort in Sarah's presence, and for the first time, he felt understood. There was no pressure to be perfect, only the freedom to improve. Their bond grew slowly, rooted in respect, kindness, and shared struggles. However, life rarely moves forward without testing the strength of the heart. One day, Sarah received an opportunity to continue her studies in another city. It was a chance she had always dreamed of, but it meant leaving behind everything familiar, including Ayan. The news brought a storm of emotions. Ayan felt proud of her, yet deeply afraid of losing the only person who had truly believed in him. Sarah, too, struggled with the decision, torn between her dreams and the relationships she cherished. The night before her departure, they sat together in silence, the weight of unspoken words hanging in the air. Ayan finally gathered the courage to speak, not perfectly, not fluently, but honestly. He expressed his gratitude, his fears, and his hopes, all in broken English that carried more meaning than perfect sentences ever could. Sarah listened with teary eyes, not because of his mistakes, but because of his courage. She reminded him that growth often requires distance, and that true connections are not broken by physical separation. After Sarah left, Ayan felt a deep emptiness, but he didn't let it consume him. Instead, he held on to the lessons she had given him. He continued his practice, day after day, speaking aloud even when no one was there to listen. He made mistakes, but he also made progress. Slowly, his confidence began to grow, not because he had become perfect, but because he had learned to accept imperfection. Months later, Ayan received an opportunity for a job interview at a small company. It wasn't a big opportunity, but for him, it meant everything. As he sat in the waiting room, his heart raced, and his old fears tried to return. But this time, he didn't run away. He took a deep breath and remembered all the mornings, all the evenings, all the efforts that had brought him here. When his turn came, he walked into the room with trembling hands, but a determined heart. The interview wasn't flawless. He stumbled on words, paused to think, and corrected himself more than once. But something had changed. He didn't let his fears silence him. He spoke, he tried, and he expressed himself with honesty. When he walked out, he didn't know if he would get the job, but for the first time, he felt proud of himself. A few days later, he received a call. He had been selected. The moment felt unreal, and as he shared the news with his mother, tears of joy filled their small home. It wasn't just a job, it was proof that effort, patience, and belief could change a life. Ayan's journey was far from over, but he had taken a step that once felt impossible. Months passed, and one evening, as Ayan was returning home, he saw a familiar face standing near the old wooden window. It was Sarah. She had come back to visit, and the moment their eyes met, a quiet understanding passed between them. They didn't need perfect words to express what they felt. Ayan greeted her in English, his voice steady, his smile confident. Sarah laughed softly, not at him, but with pride, seeing how far he had come. They sat together once again, just like before, but everything felt different. Ayan was no longer the silent boy who feared his own voice. He had found strength within himself, and in doing so, he had found a way to connect with the world. Their bond remained, not defined by distance or time, but by the journey they had shared. In the end, Ayan realized that learning a language was never just about words. It was about courage, patience, and the willingness to face one's fears. It was about expressing emotions, building connections, and growing as a person. His story became a quiet reminder that no dream is too small, and no struggle is too insignificant. Every effort, no matter how small, has the power to create change. The true beauty of Ayan's journey was not in his success, but in his transformation. He learned that failure is not the opposite of success, but a part of it. He learned that confidence is not something you are born with, but something you build through persistence. And most importantly, he learned that love, whether from family or friends, can be the strongest force that pushes us forward. As the sun set on that quiet town, Ayan stood by the same old window, no longer watching life pass by, but actively living it. His voice, once hidden, now carried hope, not just for himself, but for anyone who dared to believe that change is possible. And in that simple truth, his story found its meaning, that with patience, respect, and unwavering effort, even the quietest voice can echo across the world.